Sound starts at 9, as I said. So please take a seat. Take a seat already for the panelists. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome for today's panel on biofuels. A very warm welcome on behalf of ALDE Party, the Liberals in Europe. This is the first roundtable after the summer break, and I'm very happy that the room is so full. So this means that we have chosen the right topic to discuss. So a warm welcome to all of you, and a warm welcome as well to all people that are following online. Today's discussion is on biofuels and on decarbonizing the heavy-duty sector. You all know that we already had discussions and decisions in the European Parliament and in the Council on decarbonizing cars and light duty. But at the moment, the core of the discussion in the Transport Committee and the Environmental Committee is on heavy-duty vehicles, so on CO2 emission standards and on Euro 7. My name is Jan-Christoph Oetjen. I'm Vice Chair of the Transport Committee in the European Parliament. I'm a Liberal from Germany, so we start on time. As I already said, we are discussing at the moment the decarbonization of heavy-duty vehicles. And you all know that battery electric cars or EVs will be the future of a lot of transport modes. But on the other hand, I'm sure that you all agree that we don't have the infrastructure yet, that we don't know how it will evolve, that there are other means of decarbonizing transport, and especially for aviation and for shipping, but as well for heavy duty. EV is not the only solution that should be used in order to have the right answer for every option that people need on the ground. Because, I mean, at the end, we as policymakers, we have to do politics that fit for purpose, that fit for the operations on the ground. And so I'm convinced that there are not the only single solution that fits everywhere, but that we need alternatives. We have a very good panel today, which I would like to introduce. Happy that you're already here. I start with Raluca Marian. She's Director for EU Advocacy for the IRU, the International Road Transport Union. Raluca, happy to have you with us today.
Thank you.
You can applaud.
Good
morning. We have my dear colleague, Ondřej Kovařík. Ondřej is a Czech Liberal member of the European Parliament from ANO. Welcome, dear Ondřej. We have Dick Posnett. He's the president of the European Biodiesel Board. Welcome, Dick. And we have Carlo Hamelinck. He's a partner at Studio Gear Up. Thanks for discussing with us this morning. So I will not talk very long now because we want to go into the discussion. I just want to tell you that Ondřej and myself, we have a vote in the European Parliament at 10 sharp on the very topic. So in the Transport Committee, we will vote on CO2 emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles. And I guess you all understand that we need to be there in order to have a good outcome at the end, because there are, let's say, there will be tight votes, right, Ondřej? So just for information, that we will have to leave at 9:50 in order to be on time in the European Parliament. But I think that we will have a good discussion until then. And I head now over to my dear colleagues, and I will start with Raluca to give us a short input, max 5 minutes. I will have a look at the time. So everybody gets a short input, gives a short input, and then we will have a discussion. Thanks for being here, and have a good morning and enjoy the discussion.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Jan-Christoph, for giving me the word. So I have to break the ice now. IRU represents, for those who don't know, the road transport operators. So coach operators, bus operators, and truck operators. So we are talking about around about 7 million heavy-duty vehicles. So you can imagine that the CO2 standards for heavy-duty vehicles will have a great impact on our choice in the market. And when I'm talking about our choice in the market, it's very important to understand the types of operations we are running. Because for those that don't know, you may say, oh, trucks are, you know the trucks. But trucks do very different things. Buses do very different things, as coach do very different things. So if we start with the trucks, they can do regional, they can do city deliveries, regional deliveries, or long-haul deliveries. According to our estimate, around about 30% of the truck operations in the EU are long-haul. This means they go long distances, whilst around 70% are regional and local. But it depends on a country-by-country basis. If you take a country such as the Czech Republic, or the Netherlands or Belgium, it can be that up to 80% of their operations are international, although perhaps not very long haul, but at least quite long. And I'm telling this because depending on the types of operations we are doing, buses as well, there are city buses, but there are also regional buses. A regional bus can go up to 600 kilometers, and it's different. It's absolutely a different vehicle compared to a city bus. And then a coach is something even more different, and it can go very far. So if we look at these very different uses of these vehicles, one can imagine that they have also different needs in terms of propulsion, autonomy of propulsion, to start only with that. And based on the current status of technology, because you as legislators today, you decide based on what we know today and not based on the hopes of tomorrow, it's very difficult to imagine how a long distance truck or a coach could run nowadays with electricity. So even hydrogen is not there yet. So we have, of course, long-hanging fruits. We have things which are immediately available. We have e-fuels which are coming, but we have also biofuels, so immediate opportunities. So it would be a waste opportunity in the hope of having something tomorrow to abandon all the immediate let's say, savings, environmental savings that we could have. Looking at the CO2 standards for heavy-duty vehicles, which is what you are going to decide on today, we really have a hope now, looking at the legislation, talking about hope for legislation, that the gate for combustion will not be closed. Okay, we have hydrogen combustion, but that's very, very small. So either by the recognition of carbon neutral fuels in this piece of legislation as such, or by lower targets, which will allow us to buy also other types of vehicles, we would like the gate to remain open, also after 2040, and to have realistic targets in 2030. And for us, the realistic targets are not higher than what we have in the legislation today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Raluca. You already mentioned biodiesel as a possibility of decarbonizing immediately. So I give you the floor in order to give your keynote and tell us, how can biodiesel help us already today?
Thanks, Jan-Christoph, and thanks very much for the invitation for EBB. So I'm representing EBB, European Biodiesel Board, as president. EBB represents effectively 75% of European biodiesel production, with, and I can't remember the exact number of people, Xavier will tell me it's about 60 members, something like that, 37 members, big companies, obviously. And when I talk about biodiesel, I am including HVO as whether it's FAME or HVO, so it covers both effectively. It's effectively, it's a replacement. It's a renewable replacement of fossil diesel. My company is a company called Argent Energy. We're based in the Netherlands and the UK. We're biodiesel producers ourselves, and we're building up our capacity. So we'll be making around about 700,000 tons of biodiesel, all made from waste, within the next couple of years. So to your point, Jan-Christoph, about what biodiesel can do, and I'll just make a couple of simple points. The first one is that we don't claim, and I think generally now people accept that there's going to be a wide spectrum of solutions for heavy duty vehicle transport, and indeed all transport and the difficult to abate ones. But biodiesel is one which is sort of sitting there waiting in the wings to be used, and is sometimes forgotten by the policymakers. And it's with the best intentions, I understand, and it's a natural inclination to be thinking about what's over the horizon, and we've got to plan for electrification, catenaries, hydrogen infrastructure, fueling infrastructure. Those things have got to be done, we don't deny. But the danger is if we go too far or too much down that road, if we put all our concentration on that, we forget what is already in front of us. Biodiesel has been decarbonising for 15, 20 years now and been doing a really good job. It still remains the most cost-effective way of decarbonising a truck. And the other thing I should say is that we're only here because of policy, implementations of policies, RED or whatever, and implementation in national authorities. And if that is forgotten about, there's only one other route. You know, we won't keep investing in it. So from an investor's point of view, we've got to see that continuation. And heavy duty vehicles is one area where we are really, you know, we look around at the moment, we've got 5 to 7% biodiesel. So we've got 5 to 7% biodiesel or biofuels in internal combustion engines. And we know that it could easily be 20%, 30%, you know, we could quadruple the carbon savings with simple high blend solutions. So when it comes to the CO2 standards and indeed the Euro 7 standards as well, you can imagine what that EBB is very keen on supporting, the opening up and the facilitation, the allowance of biodiesel and biofuels to be part of that mix, because we're going to be, this need is going to be around for 10 or 20 years. And I don't know when electrification or something else is going to take over. But whether it's 10, 15, 20, 25 years, we don't really care. We just want to displace as much fossil fuel with biofuel in the meantime.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dick. I will give the floor to Ondřej, because I mean we hear the arguments, and you are working on Euro 7 on the one hand, but on CO2 emission standards for heavy duty as well. So what role should regulations on a European level play in order to make sure that the positive effects of biodiesel in saving CO2 emissions can take place? And what's the state of play?
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's actually nice to see such a crowd on this, I think, very important topic. I would maybe follow up to what has been said by Raluca and Dick on the variety of the needs of the sector when it comes to not only the performance and the mobility, basically the mobility situations and the mobility scenarios, but also the alternatives for decarbonization. Because I think to start with, we would all agree that the transport sector will have to contribute quite a lot in terms of bringing decarbonization of transport and delivering on the climate goals in the upcoming decade. But I think, as you rightly asked, Jan-Christoph, about how the public policy can actually accompany this process, I think we should really take into account the diversity of options and the diversity of requirements that are set. So in this regard, I don't think it's actually as we saw it in the political debates when it comes to passenger cars or the light duty vehicles. It would be unfortunate, and I think it would not be a smart policy making if we as legislators would only propose one single solution, or make sure that the policy is pointing to just a couple of solutions. I think that would not be smart, that would not be reasonable, and I think that would also not be fully in line with technological possibilities and opportunities that are there. I think we are here on the grounds of a liberal party, so I think we should also push for liberal stance in this regard. And I think, in my view, one of the liberal convictions and then one of the liberal, let's say, principles that we always follow is, let's give options and let's also stakeholders and the market decide which option is actually the best suitable for the exact situation and for the exact urgency. And I think this is exactly the role that we should actually have as legislators. And I think we will do our best also in not even an hour when we vote on the HGV CO2 files in the committee. This is exactly about opening the options, respecting the technological neutrality, and make sure that whatever we do in terms of policy making, we sort of do not leave this legendary stone not turned, so that we really explore all the options and we give them a level playing field when it comes to the legislative conditions at the beginning. This could be valid for the biodiesel. This could be valid for other types of fuels. This could be valid for synthetic fuels. This could be valid for options that various stakeholders are exploring in hydrogen, etc., etc. We can really see that there may be a very good technological solution for the exact mobility need that we will need to address by providing this regulatory framework. So I think this should be our approach, our responsibility, and let's see if this stand and this approach will prevail. But I really hope that this can be an option. Even if we look at the last week's speech of von der Leyen in the European Parliament, she, after some time, mentioned that we really need to listen to industry, that we really need to look into the possibilities that the businesses have at this point. And I think if we want to deliver, and if we really mean this seriously as European Union, we have to take this neutral approach that is open to all technologies in the future.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ondřej. I think you're right. I mean, if we have a policy that is in place, that is where the industry is not taking it up, and we're doing policies that are not fit for reality. And I think policies always have to be fit for reality. And I would like to give the floor to Carlo and ask you, what do you think are the challenges and opportunities concerning the market uptake of biodiesel for the industry, and concerning infrastructure, and where do you see where it is blocking?
Okay, well, thanks for having me here today, and I'll try to get to your questions as well, but maybe first also try to put a few points in the discussion here. I think indeed we need to have many options for the future. I think there's one option that we should not have, and that is fossil. And so I think we need to close the tap on fossil fuels. And the best way to do that is, I think, by the ETS for road transport, buildings, and other sectors. This points to a straight line to zero in about 2043, which means that by the time that you would introduce the CO2 emission performance standards, 90% of the fuels in the European market will effectively be clean, sustainable, and climate neutral, or almost climate neutral. So I think we don't need this CO2 performance standards for the heavy duty vehicles per se. I think it's also not so practical and not economical. I think some of the disadvantages or some of the challenges have been mentioned. It will be expensive, and expensive, I think, is going to be a problem for society in Europe, especially in Eastern and Southern Europe. How are we going to force transport companies to basically switch to electric vehicles, to develop all the charging infrastructure? We already have a congested grid there, and these trucks are 2-3 times more expensive. They will not going to be cheaper because we want to produce it more in Europe, and we want to become less dependent of China, and we also want that the batteries and the rare earth metals are going to be more sustainable than they are today. So it's not going to be cheaper, in my view, and maybe it is, but we can't really take the risk by closing roads already today. So I think that it's a bit, yeah, I know you have to vote on it, but I find it personally a bit distracting. I think that we should focus more on the fuels of today and the options of today. And if I look at the climate targets of the Fit for 55 package, basically we will need 2 to 4 times more renewable fuels in the market by 2030 already than we have today. So we need to have those high blends that Dickon is mentioning, and we need to go even above. And at some point, we will see that the demand for fuel will decline because we will have more electrification, etc. But that the fraction of renewable fuels will go up, and they will meet somewhere. And I think what I would like to bring as a message, especially here, is we need to understand that there is going to be a steep way up for renewable fuels. Whether we like it or not, we need to have those renewable fuels. So we better make sure that they are sustainable, that they meet the highest standards. That's all fine. We will have a period of these renewable fuels, 10, 15 years. At some point in the future, maybe electrification and other types of fuels will take over. Then they may decline. And then we need those pathways also for other parts of the bio-based economy. And I think we need to have an honest view on what is going to be the development path of these renewable fuels. Because if we don't, we're going to wait until the very last moment, and then we don't have any business cases. Then we need maybe the renewable fuels for a very short period to take the last hurdle, and then we will be ultimately, we have to rely on others outside of Europe. So if we want to make sure that this is, let's say, also a business case for Europe, and I think we need to be clear that we need those renewable fuels, and especially as the renewable replacements of diesel, because I think that the car segment will be electrified earlier. Although I think it's easier to do in Norway and Netherlands, I'm not so certain if it's also equally feasible in all parts of Europe. Okay, that said, I think for heavy duty, it's going to be a big challenge. And then, yes, maybe we can keep a door open by making some arrangements that some types of fuels would be allowed in these cars, in these new vehicles still. Maybe we'll have innovative solutions for that. But I think we need to switch the story, and we need to come to a more realistic and a more motivating story for the fuels that we have today. So happy that you look at the future. We need those options for the future, but I think we need to set a ceiling, make sure that this ETS ceiling is going to be there. So I'm just afraid it's going to be sending the wrong signal, and it's very distractive. And so I hope we can switch the story. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So you heard the introducing remarks by the panelists, and I will now open the floor for discussion. And I see people raising hands already, which is very good. So I hand over my mic to you, and you can distribute the mic to the colleagues. So starting there.
Good morning, thank you. I'm Alessandro Bertelloni, Fuels Europe, so the European industry of the fuel manufacturers. I think our industry is very clear. We are going to move progressively away from fossil to renewable fuels. Our members are investing already, but they have a big problem: light-duty vehicle regulation and the CO2 standards in trucks, simply because the Commission is in denial of the role that fuels, non-fossil fuels, renewable fuels can have in being part of the achievement of the target. The regulation is not technology neutral. It is just the opposite of technology neutrality. And what we need is pretty simple. So I think many of us, including some of you, so thank you for that, are saying we need the definition of CO2 neutral fuels, which is technology neutral. Fuels that meet the red should qualify, and this CO2 emitted in the vehicles, be it trucks or be it cars, should be counted zero. It's simple as that. The Commission is fighting against that. But what worries us is that the ENVI committee is strongly against that. It doesn't talk at all about fuel. Please stop it. change, reverse this trend. Otherwise, the investment, what Carlo is saying, will struggle because we don't see a future. We don't see a market demand for our future, for our fuels. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you rightly pointed to those controversies in the policy framework that I was trying also to sort of describe. In my view, it is actually not up to us, the legislators, including the European Commission, to make the call for the right technology for the future. I think we are not at that point. I think what we do is, let's say, setting targets. That is a way forward. But I think if we want to make a public policy in a responsible way, we should also make sure that we show sort of interest in how we manage the transition, and that in the way, what are the options to achieve the targets. And for that, in my view, there may be many options available. Some of them may be at this point, at a very initial stage, that would not have a market viability, but this can actually easily change in the 10 or 15 years from now. And we are currently setting targets for up to 3 decades from today. So this is something where we have to, be very, I think, open-minded in terms of setting the policy framework. And then we can discuss, on one hand, the regulatory and the binding targets and the conditions. On the other hand, the other part of the public policy is actually incentivizing. Make sure that some of the options that may be available for certain part of the mobility and transport sector can be actually preferred, or let's say preferred by the policymakers, or preferred by let's say the local authorities, if they suit better the situation and the condition in a particular country, which obviously is changing from one to another. But I think this should be let's say the key prerogative from our side, how we approach these issues.
I just want to quickly react to something you said, Jan-Christoph, and it also came from Ondřej, which is market choice. Once we decide that an option is good and it leads to decarbonization, be it e-fuels or anything else, then why are we heading towards a planned economy? So there should be market choice, and is not only about money. So, and it's not only about the cost of the vehicle or the cost of the fuel. So everything will be more expensive. E-fuels will be expensive, electric vehicles are expensive, hydrogen vehicles are expensive. We are heading towards more costs, that's clear. But for us, as I said, is first of all, we are fulfilling an essential function in the economy. And even in a planned economy, that should be paramount and should be people should keep it in their mind. We are not there for leisure. We are responding to an economic need. And that's why we can't play around. That's why we can't bet on one technology. And it's not only about money, it's about operational efficiency. So if we need 4 drivers to go from Sweden and get the vegetables and fruits from Italy, then it's a problem, because we won't have the 4 people, because we'll also have a driver shortage, by the way.
No, thank you. Xavier Noyon, Secretary General of EBB. And I just wanted to say that I hear what Carlo is saying about the distraction that the CO2 represents, because it is not addressing the immediate issue of that. It's focusing on the long term. So I could agree with him, but now we have this text, and in case it was not already clear, I wanted just to stress that how much we need the support of people like you who have this vision, because in the CO2 forecast, for example, even within your political party, it was hard to find support. And I just want to insist on one thing that has been touched upon by Carlo, a little bit by Dickon, is that it's not because we are there and we exist and we have been contributing that we don't need a perspective industrially. So when we say we need 2 or 3 times the volumes, it's certainly not because the Commission has a plan. It's just because it's really what we call a mandated demand. So if you take objective of RED, objective of ETS, objective of maritime refuel maritime, objective of SAF, we will have this demand. That is sure. But we still need the perspective. And just to say a few words, even e-fuels and synthetic fuels need biodiesel, because to build up their demand capacity and the next step, even in the field of fuel, we need this opening. So it's really these amendments that you might adopt. It's of utmost importance to give us the beginning of an industrial perspective for biofuels.
Thanks a lot for this statement. I would do a follow-up question to Dick, because when we're discussing about decarbonizing transport sector, very often people tell us, yeah, we need fuels, but we don't need them in cars, and we don't need them in heavy duty. We need them for maritime and for aviation. So we should not waste them in trucks. This is what people are telling us. So I wanted to ask Dick, because you're already, I mean, biodiesel is on the market, right? And I remember in the old days when I still did agriculture politics in the early 2000s, that we had those discussions about agriculture products going into biodiesel, and so this whole discussion on should we use food plants for biodiesel. So I would like to know from your perspective, do you think there's enough biodiesel to start this decarbonization journey for heavy duty, or do we really need this biodiesel for maritime because it's harder to decarbonize than trucks?
Yeah, good point. And it's always a point that is brought up. It's availability versus demand. So a couple of points on that. Firstly, I suppose the initial reaction is yes, there's a lot there, and there's a lot more that we can be doing. So companies like mine and others in EBB and are keen to invest. That's why we're so keen on the policy, because we need the policy supports. So, for example, in the UK at the moment, it looks like the obligation on maritime fuels is not going to include biofuels at the moment. In the EU, we've got 2% coming along as a demand. The volumes in maritime are so massive that biofuels are not going to be barely touching the sides, if you like, there. So we know that there's got to be a huge amount of work to develop whatever it's going to be, ammonia or hydro, whatever it's going to be, LPGs are going to run the maritime, the long-term scalable futures. Effectively, the same thing is happening in the SAF world, where yes, there's an HVO derivative called HEFA made from the feedstocks that biodiesel is made of. So there's a sort of competition for feedstock there issue as well. But ultimately, the really scalable fuels have got to be pushed, and they're going to be taking over at some stage. With heavy-duty vehicles, and again, it's this one area that people tend to forget. They say, "Oh, road is going to be electrified, so don't worry about it. Heavy-duty, don't think about heavy-duty vehicles. Road's electrified." But as we've heard, it is going to be a while. And the thing is that the biofuels are already in that market. The infrastructure's there. The supply chains are all there for that market. So it would seem really obtuse to have a policy that was to move biofuels away from something which is so cheap and scalable and fit for purpose in that. So shorter answer is yes, there's a lot more that can be done. Feedstocks, whether it's waste or sustainable crop-based, there's so much more, and we're hopefully going to sometimes see the new Annex 9, which is going to lay out a load of more feedstocks which are available. So there is big availability. But I just want to make one other point on this, because talking about planned economy versus market-driven, and of course we're very interested in the market being heard. and driving, and we don't want the single technologies, etc., being promoted only by policy. But you've got to recognize that we do need some policy to drive those technologies of the future. They're so expensive that there does need to be some. So I think when it comes to policy making, what I'd be calling for is a balance rather than this or a that. It's not binary, it's a balance. And I always refer to it as a twin track, which is as much attention should be put on those future scalable things, whether it's in aviation, maritime, or on heavy duty vehicles, as is put in doing it right now with what you've got right now. And you've got to have as much attention on both. And the concern about the CO2 standards is that it doesn't do that.
We give the floor to Carlo because he wanted to react on this. Just one sentence from my side. We heard here statements saying, okay, we need this certainty of policy making, that it goes into this direction in order to give certainty for investments, because I mean those fuels, they will not, I mean, rain from heaven. We have to build capacity, etc., for production. So you said we don't need all those policy measures because we have ETS, which is the right answer. And I would agree with you that ETS is the most important driver for decarbonization. But what do you answer on those statements?
Yeah, that's actually also what I wanted to say. So not closing the door for renewables, because I think it's closing your eyes for an option that will be needed anyway. And if we close the door and our eyes for this option, then basically we will still need them in the end, but we will have to get them elsewhere. We will not have the development in Europe. And I think since you brought up the topic of food and feed, which is should not be the topic of today, but still is close to my heart, and I want to say a bit about it. I think that the biofuels debate is a dragon with many heads, and you think you've chopped one off, and you think you've solved one thing, and then it grows back again. It comes up in the debate always. I don't think that we have a food shortage or feed shortage in Europe at the moment. Actually, I see that some Eastern European countries find it problematic that we have increased imports from Ukraine. I wonder how that resonates with each other. So I think what we need is a more sustainable agriculture, and the Commission, and you are also working on this, that we have a more production, but with lower sustainability impacts from agriculture, more rural renaissance. We also want to close the gap between the city and the rural regions. So there is also really a role for agricultural feedstocks. So rather than saying we don't want to use food and feed here, I would say we need to give better perspective also to our farmers. And so that's a side effect. I don't think that's for me the main thing, but I think that is also a possible view on this. And so I indeed like echoing Xavier and Dickon here. I think we should not close a road, and well, it's also only a road that will be closed in 50 years from now. But the signal that comes from it today, I think, is quite severe and is quite consistent. And I think we should be very careful with that.
Okay, Raluca, and then I would give the floor to people.
We are not the fuel producers, we are the fuel consumers, but we asked the fuel producers before we started saying that we need the door open for carbon neutral fuels, if there will be enough for aviation and for us. And the answer that we got, and it was very clear, and we put it at the time in a letter to the European Commission, co-signed with Fuels Europe, it was that actually they even need road, because when they produce for aviation, there will be some byproducts, and they need to do something with that products, and that they can very nicely put into road. But okay, we don't know if 10%, as the Commission proposed, or perhaps there will be zero coming out of the Parliament. We don't know now. In 2040, will be enough for that to become a market.
Thanks a lot, Raluca. We have the next question at the The lady at the back, in the back.
Thank you. My name is Amélie Pence. I work for Vattenfall. I have a little question because you spoke about the best technology for the best purpose. That I fully agree. But what I didn't hear so far is the efficiency about the product you are to put in the truck. Because we had this discussion about the EVs, the light duty vehicles. We know that direct electrification is the best technology and the more efficient one. And then I think it's from Germany, it comes the e-fuels things for cars. And I would like to have your view on the efficiency.
Well, let me try to give you an answer. I'm definitely not a technical expert, but I think, I mean, it's an important point to raise, indeed. But I mean, if you only take the criteria of efficiency, that would inevitably lead us to battery electric vehicles at this point, because I mean, the state of technology would be such. But I think we should also, as policymakers, take into account other options. And what I was trying to say is that in the end, the efficiency will be part of the market considerations of the stakeholders, right? I think this is exactly what Raluca was saying about the cost effectiveness. Efficiency, that's, in my view, an essential part of this equation, but it's not the only one. And exactly, that's just, well, indeed. I mean, it's part of the cost. But then I think at some point, the other consideration is in this regard, the efficiency is not a stable value. It will and it is changing in the time. And this is what I was trying to sort of allude to when discussing a sort of technological openness of the policy framework to possible other options in terms of technological advancements. We know exactly that e-fuels at this point would have a certain threshold for efficiency, but we may actually come to something different in 10 to 20 years' time. It would not be radically different, but it can change. At the same time, the transport sector is not the only one decarbonizing. We are decarbonizing the entire energy sector, and that's part of it. So I think it's an important point to raise, but in my view, it's one of the criteria that we need to consider. But if I may just a very quick word on, because Raluca mentioned the sort of user's point of view, and I think we are discussing today the road transport sector. And thank you for raising also other sectors. We're mentioning the market considerations here. I think the market in terms of road transport is structurally very different from those in, let's say, maritime or aviation. The maritime and aviation would be mostly the large groups, the large companies running fleets of airplanes or aircrafts or ships that would actually be able, with a quite high level of capitalization, actually to bear costs of the transition. When you look at the road transport sector, the market is extremely fragmented and it's diversified. And you would have a large number, including, for instance, the country that I know the best, large number small players that would have to follow the decarbonization path, but do not necessarily have the funds available because there are small or medium-sized companies running on a very small budgets on business models that are very local, etc., etc. And I think we should really make sure that we have answers for all of these. And if we don't, the risk is not only that we may lose competitiveness, but at some point the market will be extremely capacity, but the market will be extremely concentrated, and in the end would not be efficient in economic terms. But I think this is an important point to raise with when we discuss the road transport sector in European Union.
Well, I think, Ondřej, when you announced that you were not very technical, I thought maybe I can add, but I think you put it exactly as I would as well. So not much to add, but that fuels are much more dispatchable, storable, transportable in a way for, let's say, higher volumes of energy than batteries can. So there is also, and so apart from efficiency, these are also things to consider. And I think that relates very much to what Raluca has said. So in some situations, battery electric will be best. Going into the city, smaller transports, buses, etc. Sure, we'll all be electric. But if you go for the longer distances and the heavy transport, I think we need to have fuels for a longer time. And those battery electric options will be expensive indeed also for, let's say, the smaller companies and smaller individuals, smaller family businesses that have been doing transport and that want to make the innovation, but they would also need to be helped there. And that's going to be a cost for society eventually. So we also need to think about what is acceptable for society.
Yeah, it was a good question. A couple of thoughts. One was came to my mind was if you're just judging on efficiency, you'd probably have nuclear-powered trucks. But more seriously, you've got to think about it as well. But it's the cost effectiveness, and our answer is fine. You know, whatever the scientists tell us. If it's battery electric, we'll do it, but it's not going to happen tomorrow or the next day. And that's our point, is that we must not lose sight of what we can be doing right now. Let's work on that, but let's do what we can now, and that needs pushing too. And then and actually Studio Gear Up with Carlo has done some work on cost efficiency. So it's the efficiency of reducing greenhouse gases, because that's what it's about. And that's a really interesting data point as well, what the cost efficiency of the options are.
Yeah, thanks, so Dick. And as you referred to Germany, I mean, at the end, if those fuels are not competitive on the market, it will be EV. I mean, it's as easy as this, because I mean, the hauliers, they will not buy things or trucks that are costly if they have a cheaper option, so that fits for their business. So I think and the consumer. So at the end, this will not be the problem. We have 4 minutes left, and I would give Raluca has a point, so I will give her the floor.
Many points, but there is one very important point, because it's crucial for a large part of the European market, and these are the Nordic countries. And these are, we call them eco trucks. In the previous weights and dimensions fight, they were called monster trucks, but they are serving the north because they have no rail in the north. So their trucks there, they are testing 90 tons in Sweden now, 90 tons. The normal cross-border, according to the Commission law today, to the legislation today, is 40 tons, and they are talking about 90 tons. So, and the average around there is 74 tons. It's very difficult to go to the new technologies there. So it is very important to exempt them at this moment, because we do not have solutions for them. So just not to forget them, because they are the majority serving those empty, large territories of the north.
Yeah, thanks a lot for reminding us that Europe is not only Brussels or Benelux or Germany or France, but that Europe is very diverse, and that for this diverse continent, we need a diversity of solutions. And I don't know who had said, I mean, even electrification targets that we have for cars, we don't know if we meet them in 35 in all parts of Europe. I mean, probably in the Netherlands, they will do fine. But is it the same for Bulgaria, for Northern Finland, for, I don't know, Portugal? I mean, we have to do policies that fit for the whole of the European Union. And that's why I'm convinced that that we need this diversity that fits for a diverse continent. So I will do a cut now, because we will have to go for vote, and I think it's in all of your interest that we go there. So I thank you for this lively discussion, for being here today. This was the first ALDE panel that we have had after the summer break. There will be other panels on other topics that will follow. I thank the ALDE staff for organizing this and for giving us the opportunity to discuss this important topic. And I can assure you that Ondřej and myself, we will continue fighting for a very technology open policy in the European Union. Thanks a lot.
Good luck.
Thanks. Go vote.